Welcome, everyone. Welcome. Usually, I do not do lives this way. I'm always doing lives a different way. And one day, I am the off duty rapper, and another day, I am broadcasting. Another day, I am behind the scenes. Another day, I'm boiling tea outside. What am I not ever doing, folks? Anyways, welcome, everyone. Welcome. I hope this live is going to be much more interesting, a little tiny bit, just as far as interaction wise. Me and myself with you all. I wanted to prepare myself some tea, and I should just warm up what I have here, which is what I was thinking. Let's see here. And we're going to talk about the latest news and what's going on. Keep your ears peeled. Welcome, everyone. If you all are not familiar with me, pardon. I am Paviel G. I am your host here at War Notes, indeed. And I welcome you all. And this is your live update. I think we lost connection there. If you all didn't think out that civilian, we lost connection there. If you all didn't think out that civilians and parasites were target connection there. If you all didn't think out that civilians and parasites were target, what it is. Sometimes you just get disconnected. Sometimes you just get disconnected. Anyways, if you all did not catch that last, I hope we don't get disconnected again. So Ukraine's air defenses said that they intercepted 14 of those missiles, including 6 ballistic ones. President Zelensky called the attack on residential zones and energy infrastructure, quote, terrorism, end quote, pointing out that civilians and power sites were targeted. As a retaliation, Ukraine claims it launched its, quote, long Neptune, end quote, missiles into Russian territory. Now, these are upgraded versions, okay, of their domestic Neptune missile system, now with extended range. Now, as far as Russia's glide bomb buildup, there's a serious warning coming from Ukrainian intelligence. Russia plans to scale up production of glide bombs. These are guided aerial bombs, okay, that glide after being dropped, making them harder, much harder to intercept. Now, according to MOJ General Vadim Skitbudisky from Ukraine's Defense Intelligence, by the end of this year, Russia could produce up to 120,000 of these bombs, including longer range versions. Now, he said that this could pose a, quote, significant threat, end quote, since they could reach more distant Ukrainian towns, putting more infrastructure and civilians at risk. Now, in regards to Ukrainian drone and defense moves, Ukraine right now is pressing back. They started mass production of what they call, quote, octopus interceptor drones, end quote. These are designed to defend Ukrainian skies by intercepting incoming threats. Okay. Now, also, their special operations forces carried out a drone strike on a major Russian oil terminal in the area is called Novorilsk or Novorilsk. I can't pronounce it too correctly. I apologize, but I believe it's something like Novorossiysk. So it's spelled Novorossiysk. Now, reports say it sparked a big fire and damaged infrastructure. Now, back on November 7th, Ukraine's SSO claimed to have hit logistic facilities and oil depots in Russian-occupied Crimea via long-range drone strikes. Now, as far as on the ground in Donetsk and Pokrovsk, or it's spelled Pokrovsk, Pokrovsk, I believe it's pronounced a little bit there. There was new footage released by Ukraine's SBU showing Alpha, quote, Alpha, special forces operating near Pokrovsk in eastern Donetsk, in the Donetsk region. Ukraine's military is denying claims of a total encirclement of Pokrovsk. I keep saying it all different type of ways, right? But they admit that supplying their forces there is becoming more difficult. As far as Russian-Ukraine diplomacy and military support, there's a big, it's called Ramstein, Ramstein, Ramstein format meeting scheduled for December 3rd, where international military partners will coordinate more support for Ukraine. That's according to the Kiev Independent News. Now, on the diplomatic front, Zelensky is pushing his diplomats to highlight what he calls the terror nature of Russian missile strikes, hoping to drum up more international pressure. Now, here's the bigger picture. Observers say that we are seeing fractures in the global order. The world rules-based system, quote, rules-based system, feels much more fragile than ever. Some events fueling that Russia's more aggressive drone and missile tactics, but also emerging proxy conflicts, especially in the Middle East, where tensions between Israel and Iran have escalated. On that front, Iran and the Houthis have both launched missiles at Israel, and this isn't limited to one front anymore. We'll go ahead and take a quick 1 to 2 minute break here. Go on a quick pause, and we will continue with our live broadcast. I thank you all for tuning in. Now, what's new right now is, since all of this mess with the government shutdown, right? What's the latest now? As far as troops and their military pay, Trump has directed the Pentagon to use about $8 billion in unused R&D funds to ensure active duty troops continue to get paid. An anonymous private donor reportedly gave $130 million to cover military pay shortfalls during the shutdown. That's according to Reuters too as well. And even so, uncertainty looms, right? Some warn this is only a stopgap and a pay could be disrupted if the shutdown drags on. What's the current impact on military readiness and training? According to the Pentagon right now, training operations may be curtailed, which could degrade long-term combat readiness. Civilian DOD or DOD employees are being furloughed, which affects support functions, and some mission essential operations are exempt, but non-essential or support activities are facing cutbacks right now. I thought it would be interesting to discuss my dearest Marjorie Taylor Greene. Never thought that I would even say my dearest. I don't know What's the deal? I don't know if she's bumped her head. I don't know what's the deal. But right now, as far as public information is concerned, Marjorie Taylor Greene, did she break up with Trump? Donald Trump right now has withdrew his endorsement of Greene. He called her, quote, ranting, and said he might back a primary challenger in her district. The fallout seems to stem in part from Greene pushing to release Jeffrey Epstein DOJ files, which Trump apparently opposes. Now, she fired back on social media, accusing Trump of lying and trying to intimidate Republicans by blocking transparency. U.S. foreign policy and Ukraine, as far as that's concerned, folks are wondering. Greene continues to strongly oppose U.S. military aid to Ukraine. She called a move to send ATACMS long-range missiles an escalation of war, she says, end quote. I keep feeling like I have something in my nose. This is awful. Is that just me? And sometimes you feel like you have something in your nose, but you don't, but maybe you do. But then you're like, it's not a booger, but something's in my nose. Anyways. All right. So she also claims that some lawmakers want to send U.S. troops to Ukraine and says she herself, she says, quote, fight that over my dead body, end quote. She has floated a peace deal between Putin and Zelensky, arguing for negotiations instead of continued U.S.-funded war. She also denied that Putin has designs to expand the war into Europe, calling statements about that, quote, lies. So folks are wondering what's going on with the GOP and the leadership. Well, on The View, Greene was vocal. When she went on there, everybody was talking about it, right? She slammed the GOP leadership for, quote, Washington and its dysfunction and called for more transparency. She said the government has failed all of us and expressed disgust between both parties. She's also claiming that Fox News' Rupert Murdoch blacklisted her after her media appearances. As mentioned, she's one of the few Republicans pushing for a discharge petition to force a House vote on releasing Epstein-related DOJ files. She calls releasing all the Epstein files the easiest thing in the world and frames her fight as being for the victims and full transparency. And more surprising turn, Greene told CNN she's, quote, trying to speak nicely to everyone, end quote. Now saying she wants to lead by example. On Real Time with Bill Maher, she made some out there comments about believing in demons, suggesting that they could be, quote, fallen angels, end quote, or even aliens. She denied rumors that she's planning a 2028 presidential run as of now. Greene said that she won't run for Georgia governor in 2026. She's focused on her current role in Congress representing Georgia's 14th district. So why does this matter to you? Well, with GOP and realignment, her break with Trump definitely could signal a shifting power dynamic in the MAGA movement. And if she's no longer his staunchest ally, right, her political influence could change, especially in primaries, right? Now, when we discuss a foreign aid debate, as far as Marjorie Taylor Greene, her opposition to Ukraine aid and long-range missiles ties into a broader intra-party debate. Interventionists versus, quote, America First, okay, Republicans, according to public information. Her continuing fight over the Epstein files could definitely draw more attention to that issue in Congress. There's that transparency push. So if successful, it could be a big deal for public accountability, right? So her media strategy was, if she appeared on The View, right, and softened her tone a little bit, at least publicly, She might be trying to appeal to a broader audience or a reposition of herself, of her priorities, of things in life when she has apparently seen the light. Now, even though she's not running for a statewide office, losing Trump's endorsement could definitely open her up to a strong primary challenger indeed. We will continue in the next minute. I am back. Thank you all for sticking it through. Indeed. I want to talk about very quickly. It's so much going on in the world, isn't it? Okay. I want to talk very quickly about global food insecurity across the United States, across the globe. Now, the WFP warns of food aid cuts. Now, the WFP stands for the World Food Program, and they are saying that it's facing major funding shortfalls, putting 6 of its most critical operations at risk by the end of the year. That includes Afghanistan, DRC, Haiti, Somalia, South Sudan, and Sudan. Right now, as many as 13.7 million people who rely on WFP food aid could be pushed into emergency level hunger. The WFP is calling for $16.9 billion in funding for 2025 to respond to humanitarian food needs. A joint FAO-WFP, quote, hunger hotspots, quote, end quote, report warns that 16 regions around the world are on the brink of severe food insecurity from November 2025 through May 2026. In 14 of those 16 hotspots, conflict and violence are the main drivers of hunger. Key countries of concern include Haiti, Mali, Palestine, South Sudan, Yemen, plus very high concern in Afghanistan, DRC, Myanmar, Nigeria, Somalia, and Syria. There's a rise right now of global malnutrition, according to the UNICEF, UNICEF, and other UN agencies. Acute food insecurity and child malnutrition have risen for the 6th straight year. In 2024, over 295 million people across 53 countries faced, quote, acute hunger, end quote. The number of people in catastrophic hunger, which is the worst phase, more than doubled to 1.9 million, which is a record high. Famine has been confirmed in Sudan, and I welcome everybody to the room. I welcome everybody here. If you haven't subscribed yet, subscribe if you wish to do so you guys can see my big old watermelon head on here and listen to the current news. All right. So right now, unfortunately, I have to bring down the smile now because we're talking about famine, which is confirmed now in Sudan. A global hunger monitor, also known as IPC, officially confirmed famine conditions in Al-Fashir, also known as Darfur, and Karaguli, also known as South Kordofan in Sudan. The conflict between Sudan's army and paramilitary rapid support forces, also known as the RSF, has worsened the food crisis, with blockades and violence restricting aid. In Somalia, food aid has been suspended. The UNWFP is suspending food assistance for 750,000 people, unfortunately, in Somalia, starting November 2025 because of funding gaps. That comes during a critical time, so we don't know what time this month, but it comes in a critical time. Somalia is dealing with climate-driven disasters like droughts and floods and conflict, insecurity, making food needs, especially right now, urgent. Right now, as far as long-term hunger trends are concerned, despite rising acute food insecurity, a UN report, also known as the SOFI 2025, spelled SOFI 2025, notes that global undernourishment fell slightly in 2024, but the improvement is uneven. While hunger declined in some regions, Africa and Western Asia saw an increase in the proportion of people facing undernourishment. So why does this matter for us? Well, when it comes to funding crisis, aid agencies like the WFP are warning that without a major funding boost, food aid programs will shrink, leaving millions more of folks vulnerable. Now, when it comes to conflict that leads to driven hunger, and much of the food crisis is tied to conflict. In places like Sudan, Haiti, and Yemen, war is making hunger worse. Some regions are already experiencing famine conditions, which is a red line scenario for international aid. Rising malnutrition right now amongst children. That has long-term implications, as we know, for the babies and for health, development, and their stability. Long-term stability, not only short-term. But in general, global stability, food insecurity can fuel further instability. It can fuel mass displacement. And in general, we know it can worsen humanitarian crisis. We'll return in about 2 minutes. I am back. Thank you all for hanging out. If you all saw me looking this way, I was actually listening because where I live in the country, it's so quiet. So if you hear like a police car or ambulance, you're like, what's that? Where is it coming from? So, anywho's, we shall continue. Thank you all for hanging out again. So the current right now, I'm trying to keep everybody up with the current. So nobody is, oh, you know what? I should say something about this. I'll say something about this a little bit later. I made this out of corn husk. The corn that we ate the other day, I took the corn husk and I made this into like a little duster for my table. So I thought that was quite cool. Anywho's, enough about dusters. Anyway, so the federal government has reopened after its longest ever shutdown, but the repercussions are still being felt across agencies. One big story right now, the top of the United States Army says major defense contractors conned the military into buying expensive equipment rather than cheaper alternatives. Another thing going on with health insurance that's huge right now for folks. Health insurance subsidies and Obamacare are again at risk of being reshaped. Awful. Which could affect access for many in places like West Virginia. Quick update on SNAP benefits. What's going on? What's going on? So for this month of November, the USDA issued guidance telling states not to issue full SNAP benefit allotments. They were instructed to load only 35% of the usual maximum, which is a 65% reduction, which is unfortunate for a lot of folks because of funding uncertainties tied to the shutdown. After the shutdown ended, states began the process of restoring full benefits, but timing does vary by state, and many recipients still face delays, unfortunately. In some states, like Ohio, the state agency stated recipients will receive the full benefit amount minus any partial they already received once the process is complete. There's also a policy shift. The federal administration plans to require all current SNAP recipients, remember, listen to this, everyone, okay? The federal administration plans to require all current SNAP recipients to reapply to continue receiving benefits, a major change aimed at tightening program eligibility and reducing fraud, okay? This is going to be a heavy impact, of course, on a lot of vulnerable populations, children, elderly, disabled, who rely heavily on SNAP. They may unfortunately be disproportionately affected by any type of disruption. This whole recertification thing for existent recipients is going to create paperwork delays, which is awful. I can imagine for some folks. I'm not sure myself personally, but I can imagine for some folks. Some states, as of today, have updated their balances faster than others. Remember that today is November 15th, 2025. Today is Saturday. And we will be back in less than 2. So I want to get into the next part of my life here. And I think it's very important. Let me get comfortable. Very, very important. Very important. You guys know that I'm always talking about the Great Depression. And I'm always talking about World War II and history, and I'm a total history buff. And even though I do this and I do that and I do that and I do this, and I'm like, do all these multiple things, at the end of the day, I'm going to come back to crochet sticks, crochet needles, knitting sticks, yarn, a book, okay, and relaxation, okay? But I love sharing our ancestors' history. It is very important because folks tend to not realize that history has a lot to do with everything that we're experiencing. Bear with me one moment, you all. Take a quick, bear one moment.